Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
And whatever, but
You're just a low-key kind of guy, really.
rarely have much to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you do. I think you have a lot to say. I think you have a lot on your mind. You certainly have a lot to say in the practice room, which we just got done with.
Yep.
Y'all know who this is. It's Ryan Couture, Bellator fighter, UFC veteran, son of the legendary Randy Couture. I know him as all those things as well as my MMA coach.
Yep.
So let's shine some light on Extreme Couture real quick before we get started here. Tell me about your class, XC MMA. If I'm coming to Las Vegas from out of town, can I jump in even if I've never fought before?
Yep, everybody's welcome. It actually makes it kind of a challenge sometimes running the class because I'll get competitive amateurs and even the occasional pro dropping in, but also someone who's never trained a day in their life wanting to get in there too. So it makes it challenging to plan those lessons out, but it also makes it kind of fun. And I think we're really starting to get in the groove and make it work well. And I feel like the class has been growing and paying off as a result. So been having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, it's challenging as a competitor as well because, like you said, you get that mix of people with different looks, and sometimes even going with a guy who's kind of green can be a little bit more difficult in some ways because their movements are so awkward. You know, you have to be careful because they can hurt you. I kind of almost had a little bit of that today with my neck. You saw.
Yeah.
But you know, I just think I've talked to some other guys about this. I think that class is really underrated. I guess maybe the time slot is why it's hard to get more because people tend to really train more in the evening. You know, the bigger groups. And I know you teach some other classes in the evening as well here, right?
Yeah, I teach no-gi on Monday and Wednesday nights as well. So usually, traditionally anyway, have been more consistently a bigger group just because it's easier time for people. It's after work. They come in the evening and get their sweat in. But lately it's flip-flop. That class has been small lately, and the MMA class has been growing. So I don't know.
Well, one thing that I like about you, well, we're very compatible in the way that you teach because it's very it's compatible with my style.
Yeah.
But one thing also that I need a lot of work on is being technical, and you're an extremely technical teacher. You know, where did that come from?
I think it's just kind of the way my mind works. I'm a sort of an analytical thinker and a problem solver in general. So
Yeah.
something that's always attracted me to jiu-jitsu and to MMA is sort of those little technical details and what a big difference they make. So I think almost sometimes to a fault, I think it can probably be off-putting, but I really harp on the little details in my classes. And for some people, and it seems like for you, you take to that and that helps you a lot. I think for other people, they get impatient and don't want to hear it. But it's the kind of things that'll make or break a technique and be the difference between getting a nice finish and getting something on your highlight reel and having that almost finish and then ended up having to work a lot harder afterwards. So
Yeah, I have those aha moments very often when I go, oh man, shit, this is what I've been doing wrong this whole time, or like this is a technique I've been doing for years. I thought I was good at it, then I realized like if I just change one little aspect of it, Robert Follis taught very much that same way. Like he wouldn't let you, like some instructors. Not to say they're bad instructors, just any school you go to, you're going to have instructors that don't harp on the detail as much. Mm-hmm. But that's one thing I guess is kind of, it's kind of grounded in this school in Extreme Couture. Everything's very detail oriented.
Yeah, it's always a matter of finding that balance too, because if you are determined that everybody's going to do it perfect before we move on, then you're never going to get through even one whole technique in an hour class, and nobody wants that. So you got to kind of strike that balance where you're helping everybody improve and get some aspect of the details down, but not everybody's going to get there perfect, so you still got to keep the pace so that people stay engaged and stay interested. So it's a big part of the challenge of running a class. Yeah.
Well, we've spent enough time bullshitting here, so we got to get to work now.
Yep.
You got to get to work.
Yep.
Next month. Holy shit, Saad Awad. What do you think about that opponent?
I'm pumped.
Tough guy.
It's a tough test. He's been in Bellator forever. He's dangerous everywhere. It's a great challenge for me to get back on the horse and I know we're fighting at a catchweight, but he's a ranked guy at 155 and I'm coming off a couple losses in my home weight class. Got back on the winning track in June and now looking to get back in the mix at lightweight, and I think a win over Saad does that for me.
That has been a while. You said June. That was the pay-per-view at Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
Yeah. How was that?
That was incredible. It
Really?
was a career highlight for sure to just to be in such a historic venue and to get a win in front of that huge crowd was an incredible experience.
What's kept you out for so long?
I had a torn meniscus I had to get fixed up in September, and then just been waiting for my turn. I think that kind of bumped me to the back of the line, and Bellator's a crowded place right now, so it always takes a little bit to get back to the front of the line and get your shot.
Yeah, it is a little weird sometimes to get matched up in there. I've noticed with a lot of guys. Like, are you under contract with them? Do you have like X amount of fights?
Yep. I'm under. I think I have 2 fights left on my contract, if I'm remembering correctly. So we'll get in there and get this win, and put me in a good spot to negotiate the next deal.
I see. And then, what are your long-term career goals with fighting?
Still haven't fought for a title yet. That's, I really I don't think I'll be able to retire happy until I've at least had a crack at that title. So, that's why I'm so excited for this test, and having such a strong opponent. Is I know if I get this win and can do it in impressive fashion, that puts me right back up in the top of that division, and puts me that much closer to that title shot.
So how has it been? How has it been to be on the Bellator roster versus UFC? I mean, as far as the treatment and obviously you're able to retain your sponsors and things like that. It's a little bit different atmosphere. I know personally from covering both events, both live and dealing with the PR side of it, it's definitely 2 different animals. And
Absolutely.
The atmosphere is different. What's it like from a fighter perspective?
It feels like home to me. Bellator is like family. It's just fun. Fight week is such a good time. Everybody's having a good time and loving what they're doing. I've heard a couple people recently, because obviously you see a lot of people now making the jump from UFC over to Bellator, that compare it to like the early days of the UFC when it was first starting to take off, feeling that similar vibe, and I think that's kind of been interesting to hear from some of these people that have been around the sport for a long time. I feel like the fight week atmosphere in the UFC was just a lot more tension. Kind of everybody feels like and knows that their job's on the line every time out, and you don't have that same kind of stress in Bellator. Like we're there because we love what we're doing, and we're going to put on a good show, and we're going to have some fun, and it just feels a little lighter, a little more what I love about the sport to begin with.
Yeah. Because I mean, you still have like press obligations, for example, on fight week and things like that.
Yeah.
But again, speaking from my side of the house, I can see where these guys get a lot of pressure put on them, because even when they have to do this media day, show up to this event, this open workout, but they still have to do all these other phone call interviews and all these other interviews that you don't really see in the forefront. They're kind of doing behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And Bellator, they promote, but it's different. It feels like a more relaxed atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely.
And the production values of the shows has just been incredible. I mean, I know that card you won in Madison Square Garden was just phenomenal.
Oh, it was nuts when they do their, the big tentpole events, I think they call them, and to get the big digital screens, and that cage entrance turns into a whole show in and of itself. Those are really cool. Yeah,
that whole stage kind of harkens back to the Pride look, and kind of bringing that feel back. And we've even got some Pride legends that are still active and still actively competing. In fact, you got one of your teammates, Roy Nelson, going up against one in Pro Cop here pretty soon.
Yep, and they're not afraid to put on kind of those throwback fights and those fan-friendly nostalgia fights, while at the same time bringing up new talent and promoting some really high-level guys that can compete with anyone in the sport. So I think they're finding a good balance of sort of the just-for-fun fights that maybe don't have the best-in-the-world implications to them, while also still bringing on that next generation of top talent.
And when you talk about speaking with guys that are currently in UFC or that have made the jump out of there and transitioned away from it, you talked about the environment and being tense. Do you feel like it's pretty, I don't want to say anything disparaging about UFC, but I think it's pretty well documented. The toxicity is pretty, it's a pretty formidable thing to wrestle with when you're on that roster.
Yeah, and I don't think everybody has that experience there. And for me personally, I don't want to give the impression that I feel like everybody was an asshole and I was mistreated. Everybody that I worked with was always super, super good to me there, and I had, for the most part, a great experience. But obviously the little asterisk to that is that my old man was on the outs with Dana, and that kind of trickled down to me in in a secondary way. So everybody was good directly to me, but having that other aspect of it made things a little weird.
I know what you mean.
But you see all the time, you know, some people are on the good side and get great treatment and have a blast, and some people are always kind of butting heads and at odds and get a little bit mistreated, and it's just sort of a weird, you know, a weird different standard that different people get held to.
That's a good point, because now that I think about it, now that you articulate that, the military is very similar in that respect. You know, you could talk to somebody like me who absolutely loves it, and you could talk to somebody else with a completely different experience who'll tell you that it was horrible and they hated it, you know, every minute of it.
I guess that's true of any workplace, really. Like, if you get along with your boss, you get along with your coworkers, then you're going to like your job even if the work kind of sucks. But you could have the coolest job in the world, but a dickhead boss, and it's going to be miserable. So,
yeah,
you know, it's all about how you get along with the people you're surrounded by.
So you talked about being an analytical thinker, and you know, I've always kind of gotten that impression of you just from interacting with you. You know, don't take this as a slight, because it's not. But you're a bit of an oddball, you know, which is probably why you and I click well, because I'm a bit of an oddball myself. But I read an interesting fact about you. You actually have your degree in mathematics.
Yep.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Because mathematics is not easy at the college level, especially when you're trying to obtain a degree. At what level did you achieve? Don't you have a master's?
No, I never went for my master's. I always kind of thought I might, but never got around to it. I ended up finding my way to getting punched in the face instead. But you know, I went to college not really knowing what the hell I wanted to do. Always kind of had an interest in math and science, and thought maybe engineering or something, but kind of goofed around until it was like, oh, I guess I have to declare a major, and started looking through the book at what was what. And if I had tried to do an engineering degree, I would have been in college probably for 7 years by that point, because I was so far behind schedule. And it's like, well, I feel like math is pretty versatile. I've always loved it. I've taken some classes and done well in them, so I was off to a good start, and I could still graduate on time. So that was sort of my decision process for that, and figured I'd find a use for it. It's broad enough and applies in enough different fields that I figured it would be useful at some point. Still kind of hasn't, because I ended up doing this, but I'm glad I did it.
Well, in your day job, if you will, you also, in addition to coaching, you also work at Extreme Couture on the management staff. So, I mean, do you ever have anything to do with the financial aspect of it? Or
a little bit, yeah. So every once in a while I'll get to come up with a way to solve a math problem. It's never anything super high level that I needed a college degree for.
Right. Yeah, but that's a special gift, you know, having brilliance in science or mathematics. In fact, I was going to say, you remind me, you have a very engineer type personality. That's what I am in the military. I'm currently transitioning over to PsyOps, but I commission as an engineer officer.
Okay.
So that's very much your personality. Would you ever, like, in the twilight of your career, would you ever consider like being a teacher, like a mathematics teacher or a professor?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I used to think that was the last thing I'd ever want to do, because I was terrified of like talking in front of groups, and that's pretty much the whole job. But having some coaching experience here, it's basically the same thing. And
oh yeah,
you know, so I could see actually really liking that and thriving in that atmosphere, possibly somewhere down the line.
And how old a guy are you? You're about my age, right?
35.
35? Okay, and so do you think you'll follow in your father's footsteps in terms of like longevity? You don't want to fight that long?
No. Well, even if I really wanted to, I think my body and my wife would both have something to say about it. So, you know, I think I got another good run in me, a few more fights, but it's not going to be too many more years that I'll be doing this. I think I'm definitely in the phase of my career where I'm kind of winding down and figuring out when to finish up.
Yeah. What are you passionate about outside of martial arts?
This
if
gym,
anything?
I mean, I love being in this building, and anything I can do to be involved here and be a part of this team and this family is what I want to be doing. So that's kind of my goal long term, is to continue to find ways to make this sport and make this gym pay my bills.
A lot of great fighters here, past and present, yourself included, and a lot of great coaches. So who's going to be with you when you go down to Temecula?
Eric Nixick be my head coach again this time. He ran camp last time too, because Coach Follis had, I think, Kevin Lee that same weekend. And we had a great time. We clicked really well. He's one of my best friends and my, you know, partner here running this place, and a fantastic coach in his own right. So really excited to be working with him again. And then my dad's always there for me, and he'll be in the corner as well. Although he's in and out of the gym because he travels so much in the lead up. So
Yeah.
So when he's in town,
That's
he'll help
awesome,
in,
though.
and yeah, he's got a lot of good input for me. Always helps me keep my clinch game strong and keep me focused on the right track, on the right game plan. And Eric does a great job adding in those other details and keeping me honest and keeping me trained right.
Yeah, he's excellent, man. Great dude, great coach. Yeah, and just about your dad real quick, though. So when you grow up with Randy Couture as a father, are you then obligated to be a wrestler, to be a fighter, or is it something that you just like you wanted to do because you look up to him, or is it a little bit of both?
I mean, I grew up around it, so I was a fan of it just from having grown up running around wrestling rooms and then seeing his career progress. I was a huge fan of MMA before I ever even thought about competing. I was always interested in martial arts anyway, was trying to watch Van Damme movies any chance I could get as a kid, and I thought that was cool throwing.
We're from the same generation. If you don't understand that reference, go watch Expendables. You'll.
So I always had an interest, but never saw myself competing in it. Dad always offered himself as a resource, but never pushed me towards participating in any of that stuff. So I always had the option to wrestle, but never any pressure to do it. I actually went out for junior high wrestling because I didn't make the basketball team. I wanted to be a basketball player, but it turns out I'm terrible at that.
Me too.
And it worked out great because I fell in love with wrestling and ended up doing that all the way through high school, and took a 4-year break to get drunk and fat in college, and then found my way to jiu-jitsu after I graduated.
So you started wrestling in junior high.
Yep.
And then where did you go to college?
Western Washington University.
Okay. And so you pretty much grew up in Washington.
Yeah, from I think it was 6th grade on. That's where I lived. So that's home. That's where I did most of my growing up.
Where were you born?
I was born in Seattle. Then we moved all over the place because that was when Dad was in the Army.
Oh, okay.
So we went to I think Alabama for basic, and then we're stationed in Germany for a few years, and then
okay.
Tennessee, and then Oklahoma, and then Oregon, and then when my parents split up, Mom took us back to Seattle where her family was.
Oh, awesome.
So,
Okay. How long was he in the Army?
8 years.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought he just did like 4 years.
Yeah, no, he did 8. He went to air traffic control school and then got picked up on the wrestling team and ended up doing that for the majority of the time he was there.
That's awesome.
So
Cool.
yeah.
All right, well, we touched on this a little bit before, but as we close out, who's going to be sponsoring you to make this happen? We know that you got the team behind you, the coaches. Who else helps you out?
Affliction Sport's been great to me. My chiropractor, Canyon Lake Neck and Back Clinic, has always been real good to me.
Oh man, I need to hit that place up.
Dr. Savacci's awesome. You got to go see him.
Okay.
Who else? I'm drawing a blank. I don't know. We're still figuring out all that stuff.
Sure.
I always get wrapped up in training, and probably I'm leaving somebody important out.
Do you manage yourself? Do you have somebody that manages your affairs for you?
Extreme Couture Management is a company my dad started with Sam Spira, who's his longtime attorney and manager, and they take great care of me. So.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Again, that's what number Bellator is that? I'm not sure. We got 199 coming up next
201,
week.
I think.
201. I know for sure it's in Temecula, and it's June the 29th. You got Ryan Couture stepping back into the Bellator Cage after a little bit of a layoff. Ryan, thank you so much for your time, brother.
My pleasure.
Best
Thank
of
you.
luck. For MMASoldier.net, I'm Rodney James.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.